Greetings, stellar viewer. So I attempted to record this video 2 days ago, and in the midst of me being about 20 minutes deep into the recording, I got to the end of my note that I had on my iPad. Unfortunately, all of the notes that I wrote out by hand on like the little note section with my Apple Pen did not save. So I was like, okay, it is what it is. So I only was about a fourth into the episode at the time that I realized I didn't have the rest of the notes. So I took the liberty of rewatching Interview with the Vampire episode 1, season 1, and I redid my notes completely because I am nothing if not thorough. And so all of this is notes. It is just over it's 8 pages in total, and then it's just over 1,444 words. So I have a lot to say. I have a lot of thoughts, and I just posted a video from my TikTok. So if you are coming from that specific post, hello, and thank you so much for venturing over to listen to my thoughts, hear what I have to say about this episode. If you are not familiar with my content as of yet on YouTube, I posted a few posts back showing a little bit about New Orleans, where I'm from, and I talked about like some customs, traditions, folklore, things like that, and I did mention vampires. And in one of my vlogs that I posted last year with me going back home, I did a vlog in New Orleans, and I showed a little bit of some spots where Interview with Vampire was filmed. So yeah, I got into the show last year around, I don't even know, it was like towards the end of last year, and obviously things were crazy. Things are still currently crazy in the world right now, but I wanted to reserve space, hold space to talk about things that make me happy and are interesting to me, because I feel like we need that now more than ever, right? So I have a bunch of notes that I'm going to be reading from and talking about on this. So I hope that you find this interesting. Open discussion in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts, because I haven't talked to anyone in my actual life, like in person day to day, who have watched Interview with a Vampire. And I first posted about it on like a TikTok video last week, or maybe the week before last, something like that. I don't know. Time is a construct and an illusion, so we'll keep it pushing. Okay, so I wanted to just preface that I am going to be reading from this for the most part, so I hope that you don't mind. Okay, so firstly, I wanted to mention I love a good historical piece, and of course, I love my home city of New Orleans, where the show is based. So I immediately knew that combining my favorite things, vampires and New Orleans, I would be easily pleased. But what surprised me was just how much of the show was like pleasing. I have like no bad remarks on episode 1. The pace of it, the writing, the acting, yes, 10 out of 10. So one thing that I should mention again is just, this is my third rewatch of the show. I discovered it, like I mentioned, late last year, and I binge watched season 1 and 2 within like, I think a 3-week span. I watched both season 1 and season 2 times. And even though this is the beginning, like I'm starting at season 1, episode 1, this is me for the first time actually talking about it and breaking it down. And I'm still noticing things, and during my rewatch, that I completely missed the first time that I watched it. So it is what it is. But I actually got my beginning start of content creation on TikTok by posting about another set of vampires from the Twilight Saga. And this is definitely not Twilight vampires, like, whatsoever. And I couldn't help but notice like the parallels and differences between the vampires and Interview with the Vampire and the vampires of like Twilight versus other vampire shows that I've watched and what have you. So yeah, I'm gonna be breaking down my initial thoughts on like character order and like which they are presented in the show. And we're gonna start with the GOAT, okay? Daniel Malloy. Love him down. Investigative journalist, immediate fave. His bluntness was very charming to me, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Capricorn. I'm not. But Daniel gets a box of cassette tapes and a letter that was written in very beautiful cursive writing, which seemed to disturb his rather cool seeming demeanor. And the box of tapes are dated from the late 1970s, and it plays an old conversation from a young Daniel and the author of the letter itself. Next thing you know, Daniel is on his way to Dubai. Period. After 49 years, he meets again with the heartthrob vampire, Louis Dupont du Lac. Wow, love to see it. So Daniel goes right in with the attitude. Okay, tensions are high. Come to find out at the last meeting, Louis tried to eat him. Yeah, he tried to eat him from. I was like, oh, it'd be like that sometimes, I guess. If you hang out with vampires, vampire stuff is gonna happen. In the same scene, we get like their backstory. We also see what happens to a vampire in the sunlight, which is more typical of the vampire lore that is like relatively common. So instead of sparkling like the Twilight vampires in Interview with the Vampire, like what's it called, universe, they sizzle and burn up. Yeah, so to mention, this was during COVID-19. Mind you, if I had this show during COVID, I feel like my content would have been very, very different. Instead of talking about Twilight, I would have been all about Interview with a Vampire. So the reason why Daniel Malloy came all the way to Dubai during the pandemic is because Louis wants to finish his story and wants it to be told from all of those years ago, just kind of wipe the slate clean. He wants to begin a fresh little start or whatever. And Daniel is curious because he doesn't remember a lot of the conversations that took place back in the 70s because he was loaded and high off of his mind. So Daniel restarts the interview going, so how long have you been dead? The next scene goes back in time to Storyville, New Orleans, which is a real place. And Louis sets the scene by retelling his human experience. He's a young, successful Black Creole man with business enterprises that yielded a fair amount of success, although some did not agree much with it. We will get to that in just a second. But he ran a brothel, amongst other things. And here we're introduced to his brother, Paul, by the way of him harassing women working there with pleas and a Bible in his hands. He was known as a citizen priest. So Louis and his brother Paul get into a little scuffle in front of his place of business, and amidst a crowd of onlookers, one in particular was a very different looking, type of man. Yeah, we'll get to him. So the next scene shows us the family dynamic. So there's Louis, there's Paul, his sister, and his mother. So his father passed away, it's revealed, some years back, and to maintain their large home and trust, Louis made the choice to go into the business of women versus sugarcane, as it paid better, essentially. So we get more insight here at the breakfast table with the family. His brother is said to have mental issues that previously had him in a mental hospital. And, there was a little light banter at the table, and it's revealed that his sister just wants to plan her wedding and, not worry about Paul and Louis fighting. So after breakfast, Louis and Paul head to the church where we're introduced to the priests. Later that evening, Louis reveals his desire for company, not of the female persuasion, if you will. But there was one lady in particular who worked at a higher end brothel, like a couple blocks away, worked for his competition actually, that did, he did pay her for like her company and just to chit chat, nothing more than that, since he had known he was gay. I think he said like since he was younger, but that's something you can't be, especially like in 1910. You can't be black and gay. Like basically the mindset was like pick a struggle. So her name was Miss Lily, and her attentions that particular evening were elsewhere, as there was the mystery man from the crowd of onlookers earlier, a Frenchman, and basically monopolized the conversation between Lily and Louis. Immediate beef. Immediately, Louis was like, this raggedy. The man reveals himself via little business card, as Lestat de Leoncourt. He was sassy, he was quick-witted, and he was all over that lady. Like, I cannot express, he was groping her, like, essentially. And he was just like so mesmerizing. He was going between speaking English and speaking French. So like, yeah, tensions were high, but he basically outbid her. Like, that's such a terrible thing to say, but both Louis and Lestat were throwing money on the table for Lily's, time. And unfortunately for Louis, Lestat won. And, Louis told Daniel he did not know if he wanted to murder Lestat or be Lestat. And that's real. That is real. Okay. So at their next meeting, at a card table, there is the man himself, Lestat de Leoncourt, flexes his ability of telepathy, and he informs Louis mentally that it's a shady business deal that they're trying to rope Louis into. Basically, for his next trick, Lestat pauses time. I told you I was made up. No, but Lestat pauses time and essentially verbally speaks to him, because Louis was like, am I hearing things right now? Is this really this man's voice in my head? I'm really confused. Lestat pauses time, takes one of the cards from one of the other players at the table, gives it to Louis, just to prove whatever. Louis ends up winning all of their money. And Louis like, okay. I see what's going on here. By doing this interaction, it began their relationship of sorts. So they began to see each other more frequently as Lestat moves in and gets more like accustomed to the city and begins making business investments with Louis. The one particular scene of them in front of St. Louis Cathedral is so cute. The last time that I went home to visit, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, the little vlog, I was like in front of St. Louis Cathedral, like anyone can go. You can't go in it because it's like closed off or whatever, but you have more fun outside the church anyway. But it was so nice because I got to see like the little benches where they sat, and like where a lot of stuff was like filmed, and like Pirates Alley, which was like the last scene of, or like the last clip of the vlog that I had. It was in Pirates Alley where Lestat had killed that man at the beginning of the show. But yeah, so love St. Louis Cathedral. It's so cute. It's also interesting. So it's St. Louis Cathedral, but Louis is still spelled the same as Louis. That's Louisiana for you. So Louis says to Daniel at this point that he was being hunted and he had no idea. The next scene is Louis and his sister are chatting about like her upcoming wedding and watching Paul talk to himself like on the balcony. Then she mentions wanting to meet this French white man that people have been saying Louis has been like spotted hanging out with a little bit too much. So she extends the invite to their home and like to Lestat to get a better sense of things. And, it gets a little tense. It gets a it's a little steamy in there. So basically, Paul, being who he is, got a bit of an attitude with Lestat, and Louis could tell that he was using his mind powers to like subdue Paul. And Louis had to get a little loud with him at the table, you know, to snap him out of it. And after dinner, you know, they walked it off to try to, you know, cool everything down. And Lestat and Louis like head back to, you know, Lestat's place or whatever. And during the walk, he kind of opened up about his struggles. Louis opened up about his struggles and, you know, a little bit about, you know, his desires that were all but unattainable. They end up back at Lestat's place, and the queen herself, Miss Lily, is there that evening. Hang on, let me compose myself. Louis got to be himself. He got to be who you are. I was so happy for him, okay? I love Lestat and him so badly. I do. Interview with the Vampire, I was unfamiliar with your game. I'm no longer living in ignorance. Nobody told me this was going to be a gay vampire romance. So, like, even more locked in, if you can imagine. Unfortunately, though, at the time and climate, like I mentioned, being who you were was not possible. Yeah, like, especially a gay black man. Nah, Louis was like, yeah, I'm not actually going to risk it for the biscuit again. I'm out. So he left Lestat's place without even saying goodbye, which I thought was rude because what do you mean? Like, at least tell him goodbye. Like, that's bae. Whatever. So the next scene was of Grace's wedding. So Grace is his sister, his little sister. So she mentioned that she was getting married, doing all of her wedding preparations. So the timeline is something that I'm still a little murky on, but like at the opening scene at the breakfast table with the mom, brother, sister, she mentioned her wedding was like in a month. And Louis mentioned after, like, he was just gonna like ghost Lestat after like they hooked up. And so I'm assuming it had been about like 1 to 2-ish weeks between like them no longer like speaking to each other. And someone correct me if I'm wrong, please. Like if you know the timeline better, hook a sister up. Thanks. Okay. So the cutest little dance number happened at this scene between Louis and Paul. Sorry, my thing like jumped back up to the top. Anyway, so the cutest little dance number happens between Louis and Paul. So they performed a little dance to like get money and stuff like that thrown for Grace's wedding. And it was such a happy vibe. And like, oh, it was so cute. I think I rewatched that scene, I kid you not, like 6 or 7 times, because like I love like jazz music and just like instruments in general. I feel like it's very pleasing to my ears. That is probably because I was raised surrounded by that, but it was very like nostalgic for me. But you know, as you know, the happy vibes in Interview with the Vampire, they like to play with people's feelings, you know. So the next day at sunrise, Louis and Paul go like on top of the house and they're talking about life and the future, and it was just like such a heartwarming conversation that they had. And Paul tells Louis, I love you. And Louis like, I love you too, baby brother. And unfortunately, Paul just like walks off the roof. So he died. That was the last sunrise Louis said he would ever see. As the funeral approached, Louis and Paul's mother blamed Louis like for Paul's death. She blamed, like the grief was like so bad that she would like pick at Louis, which is just like horrible. And you know, because Lestat, being the possessive hot boy that he is, you know, he couldn't read the room, even though he could read people's minds. And at the funeral procession, he shows up and confronts Louis on avoiding him. Like, baby, BFFR. Like, there's a time and a place to like try to flirt with somebody at their brother's funeral is like probably not it, I would think. Oh, I wanted to insert here for anyone who's curious, during the funeral walk, anyone or someone might have noticed that people were holding like musical instruments. That's something that I mentioned in one of my previous videos about like New Orleans customs, but it is customary for a band and like a small parade called a second line to kind of be like the funeral procession, because typically it's a celebration of life and not necessarily like a super mourning period. So I'm really happy that the writers also incorporated that, because that is what happens. Not as much, like, it's not as common for funerals anymore, but typically people do it for like weddings and things like that. But for sure, like, you can expect to be carried away to the grave with a nice little band playing a cute little number. So same scene, Louis is like trying to shoo Lestat away, and you know, he's possessive, does the telepathy thing, and gets in his mind enough that Louis literally runs to the church to confess to them. Lestat shows up, kills the two priests, and then and there, right in the church, changes Louis into a vampire. I was like, damn, you couldn't have waited until maybe he left the church. Like, you had to like go in there and do all of that. I will say I don't condone murder. However, that scene of the one priest running away, and he's running in like slow, or is he in slow-mo? I can't remember. Either he's in slow-mo or Lestat is in slow-mo. But like, no, I'm lying. Okay, so Lestat is walking at a normal pace and like catching up to the priest who's like slow-mo running away to like try to, you know, live. And I don't know, I feel like that scene was like really iconic. Killing him was a bit much. It was a bit much. But the cinematography, chef's kiss. Okay. So they go and dispose of the bodies, because obviously at this point Louis is fully changed into a vampire. There's no waiting, you know, 12 hours, couple days or whatever. It was like rather immediate, and Louis was like super thirsty, and he was trying to drink the blood of the priest. And one of the tenets of the vampire is you only drink blood from the living, because if you drink blood from the dead, the death will like suck you down with it or whatever, I think is kind of how he put it. I'm paraphrasing. It sounded weird, but you know, we move. Okay, so they go to the cemetery and dispose of the two priests' body in like the graves there. And fun fact, those graves are actually above ground in New Orleans, because the city is well below sea level. It's essentially in like a bowl. So like the city is like right here. And because of that, heavy rains, floods, things like that, you don't want that to happen, essentially. Like, and especially in a cemetery, we have our graves above ground. It's not ideal. So I just want to say, as I wrap up this video, as I end it in just a second, I genuinely, the cinematography, episode 1, just all of Interview with the Vampire, but I'm specifically talking about episode 1, season 1. Cinematography, beautiful. Writing, beautiful. The pace of it, phenomenal. 10 out of 10. I have no notes. The only thing, like I said, I was curious about was kind of the timeline in of itself, but it's just something that I'm curious about. It's not that it takes away from the story whatsoever. But yeah, I would also like a huge shout out to the actor who plays Louis, and also the actor who plays Lestat as well. But specifically, like a specific shout out to Louis, because the New Orleans accent, it is very, very difficult to like fool someone who is like from New Orleans. You can tell if it's a genuine accent or not. And I believe I saw an interview clip from, I don't know how long ago it was, but it was his actual voice, the actor who plays Louis, and he's like British or something. And so I'm like, wow. Like, it genuinely amazed me. Like, he did really, really well in that. And yeah, I would also like to give my condolences to everyone who got rocked in Interview with the Vampire episode 1, okay? Rest in peace to the priest. Rest in peace to Miss Lily. Oh yeah, that was something I forgot to mention. Found out as he was on his way to the church, he tried to go to that brothel to, you know, go hook up with Miss Lily. She did. She was gone. Lestat ate her. And then he was so petty too, because, you know, he can like have the telepathy thing or whatever. And while he was talking to the madam of the brothel, whenever she told Louis, oh yeah, Miss Lily died. She caught the fever that's sweeping through town, found her body wherever, and it was like all the blood just went up and dried inside her. I didn't hear it the first couple times, but this time, Lestat goes, yum. Rude. He's so unhinged. He's so unhinged, but he looks so good. So, you know, we're gonna try to look past it. We're gonna try to look past it. But yeah, that was like a complete breakdown, essentially, of episode 1, season 1, Interview with a Vampire. I keep saying that backwards, don't I? Season 1, episode 1 of Interview with a Vampire. If you are interested in having more discussions on this, I am more than happy to break down episode 2 or just like the season recap as a whole. Just let me know. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I mentioned kind of whenever I first had like my YouTube resurgence that this channel was going to be a lot of different things that I am interested in and that I wanted to talk about. And I meant that. I meant that. So we have a lot of different content on here, you know, keeps things lively. But yeah, thank you so much for watching and supporting, and I will see you in another video very soon. Have a stellar day.